it on Microsoft Azure. Cost perspective, it might be very helpful session because Martin will explain about how you can save the budget money on Azure. And is regarding today's session, we have done few interesting session in past. Microsoft Azure Advanced Threat Protection or related to microservices. So if you are interested, you can go and visit them on our YouTube channel. And there are a couple of session events happening in coming days. On Tuesday, there is a Microsoft 365 user group is organizing My Analytics and Power Automate Desktop by Rene. So if you are interested in Power Automate or Microsoft 365, so you can join the session. And there is also another event on the next day, July 14th. So it is more on Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. So if you are interested in that, you can join that. These all sessions are already published on our meetup group. So meetup.com, you can just go and see there. And there are also event happening in our Azure data community. So this is a data session season 2, episode 5. There'll be 2 interesting sessions, one on Power BI and second will be on Twitter sentiment analytics. So if you are interested in any one of them, you can join the session. And this is our YouTube MVP group. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go and subscribe. All our session recordings are available on our YouTube channel, and you can see our previous sessions, and if there is any upcoming session schedule, so you can watch on YouTube also. And we have done some chartbuster session with different cloud advocates and experts, so you can go and visit again same on YouTube channel. Before I hand over to Hasnain, there is a few reminders. Please keep yourself on mute, and if you have any questions, you can use your raise hand feature. And this session is being recorded. If you like it, please spread the words on social media platform. Yeah. So now over to you, Hasnain.
Hey, thank you so much, Asif. I'm really excited. Okay, let me know once you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
All right, so today we are going to talk about how to secure our identity with zero trust, considering the devices to data to applications and human. These all are considered as identity. So how do we protect those? Okay, so looking at today's agenda, I'm going to talk about some of the guiding principles for zero trust. What are the different zero trust components? Okay, like in terms of protecting your identity, devices, and all different sorts of cloud apps. Okay, and then I'm just going to talk about why do we really need to consider the zero trust security model. Okay, and then starting with the what are the things that can be done using Microsoft Azure Active Directory Premium features to secure your identity following the zero trust deployment model. Okay, and then followed by some of the demo that I have planned. Okay, and towards the end, if there is any questions, would be glad to answer those. Okay. All right. So the guiding principle of zero trust says never trust, always verify. Okay, so the cloud application and the mobile workforce, right, that have redefined the security perimeter. Now employees are like bringing their own devices and working remotely. Data is exposed out of the corporate network, shared with external collaborators such as partners or vendors. There are so many different corporate applications, on-premise applications, cloud applications. Okay, so now the organization cannot rely on the traditional network controls for security. So earlier, pretty much was just within the data center. Now it's like everywhere, right? So the control needs to move where the data is, maybe on devices, inside the applications like encryptions, with partners, like sharing the data, put the control saying that, okay, the data can be accessed only for maybe like 7 days, 10 days, have those all the encryption in place. Okay. And then instead of believing everything behind the corporate firewall is safe, the zero trust model basically assumes a breach and verifies each request as though it originated from an uncontrolled network. Okay, so regardless of where the request originates or what resource it accesses, the zero trust model teaches us to never trust, always verify. Okay, so starting with verify explicitly, it says that always authenticate and authorize based on the available data points. So that could be your user identity, which location is he coming from, does he have access, granted the access for that particular application, the device he's coming, is that the compliant device? Okay, is it a company issued device? Is it a personal device? Okay, what application is he going to access? Okay, is he really allowed to access that application from that particular location? Okay, different types of data classification and anonymous. Okay, talking about the second point, using the least privilege access. So keeping in mind the risk-based adaptive policies means give the access as much as required and only when required. Okay, that will protect both the data and the productivity as well. Okay, talking about the assumed breach. So it basically talks about segmenting your network. So instead of having a flat network in your organization, segregate it with a smaller chunk of networks. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay. So in terms of the zero trust components, like I mentioned, right, there are different components that needs to be protected. We will be primarily focusing on identity. Okay, so in the identity, there'll be like IDTP provider, that could be like Azure AD in this case, that I'll be talking about, multi-factor authentication that you can have, the user-based session risk, whether depending upon the user location, right? Azure AD identity protection can help you to define whether it's a high risk user, a low risk, or based on that you can define or have your policies configured. Okay, devices can be corporate devices, unmanaged devices, so that will have the inventory and have the device risk and compliance state. So that means using the Microsoft Intune, you can define the compliance policies saying that the device should be this, like it must, the disk must be encrypted, must be a password protected. So it's different sets of policies that can be defined to say that if the device is meeting these criteria, then only the device will be compliant. And we can configure the policy saying that, hey, if the device state is compliant, then allow the application access. If not, then don't allow it. And this all thing that goes right is like real time. Okay, and we will see that in the action today. All right, talking about the data, use your email and documents, right? Protect with your Azure information protection, classify those, encrypt the data. Okay, when sending an email with the external user, if it's a contains sensitive information, encrypt those emails. Okay, talking about the SaaS apps. Okay, configure it with Azure Active Directory, as put that as a central control. Means if there is access for, let's say, ServiceNow, Salesforce, or Google Cloud, or any other cloud applications, right? Put Microsoft Azure Active Directory as a central control for identity. That means all the authentication requests should pass through Azure Active Directory. Okay, and same can be also for your on-premise applications. You can publish that through Azure Application Proxy, so you do not need to open up your traditional firewall rules. Okay, and this will be all just the outbound request, no incoming firewall rules required. Okay, talking about the infrastructure, yes, it's all about the Azure privilege identity management or just-in-time access kind of stuff. And for the network, have the internal micro-segmentation. Okay, put it in the smaller chunk of networks instead of putting in the flat network. Okay, now coming to the why are we having this zero trust conversation, right? So nowadays, we all have been hearing about the cyber incidents happening every now and then, right? IT security is becoming much more complex now, considering the users using multiple devices, using different sorts of applications to connect, or sometimes they access from the internal network, sometimes they access externally. So initially, we were like, just protect the data center, right? So nothing much was exposed. If exposed, it was only through the VPN. So user connect to VPN and then only get the access, right? Now that's not the case anymore. User access it like BYOD, work from home, mobile, different cloud applications. Okay, some accessing the application from one cloud app to the another one. So all sorts of challenges, and the complex scenarios are now there available. And attackers' mindset has also changed now, okay, from network to identity. Okay, so that's why the identity has become the new parameter. They go after the identity, and most of the times the phishing emails is the first one where they start trying to attack and put their weaponizing or the tools that they have for performing the vulnerability or exploiting the environment. Okay, and with all this, security teams, be it anywhere, right, they are overwhelmed, and not many security professionals also to cope up with all the new challenges or new enhancement that's coming up each and every day, right? The cloud is definitely ramping up very quickly. So how do we start our identity trust deployment, right? Using the zero trust model. So before most organizations start the zero trust journey, right, their approach is to identity is definitely a problematic, right? Different cloud applications, different identity. I mean, IAM team or the identity team doesn't have much control over that. Okay, so and there is no SSO single sign-on present, wherein one identity can control the access for all other applications. Okay, so the first thing we need to start is get our identity to Azure Active Directory. If it's a existing Active Directory, you can sync it. If it's a new setup, you can directly have it in the Azure Active Directory itself. Okay, then put Azure Active Directory as the central control. Integrate your cloud applications with Azure Active Directory. So every request that comes up will come to Azure Active Directory for authentication, and there you can define a different sets of policies to say that which application and which user, which device location should be allowed to grant the access for that particular application. So that's what we talk in the explicitly with strong authentication. Setting up the conditional access, that's the control point, I would say. So this is where you will define that for just a use case I can give you. If the user is accessing the application, let's say Office 65, he shouldn't get the prompt for multi-factor authentication. But the moment user go out of the company network, he should be challenged for multi-factor authentication. Or you can use another scenario is the user should be able to access a resource, let's say from Singapore only. If there are any other country request comes up, don't allow that login request. Okay, so those sorts of things we'll see in the conditional access. Coming to the identity governance, that's where we talk about the privileged identity management. How do we secure the administrative accounts? So the privileged identity management will ensure that the user will have admin access only for a specific period of time whenever required. Okay, otherwise that account will have no privilege. It will be just like a standard user account. Okay, and also restrict the user consent to application. So a couple of times the user, we get the prompt, right, where like the Google wants to access your first name, last name, those details. So when it comes to the corporate resource, restrict the access so that user cannot grant the consent for the application. Okay, give the or configure the consent permissioning model wherein user can request, but the consent can be granted only by the administrators. Okay, and since user, it's a human behavior, right? There are so many different cloud applications we use. At times we tend to keep the same password, right? So if there is no password, there is it will pretty much reduce the risk of phishing or the password attacks. So that's why it talks about to go with the passwordless. Okay, determining the risk and protection, we can leverage the Azure AD password protection, which will basically ensure that you can define certain types of password, like most of the people put like password or the ABC at 123. So you can define those customized password, which will ensure that user cannot set those passwords, that it can be guessed easily. And then enable the identity protection, which will ensure that there is, it will basically use the signals to ensure there is no sign-in risk. If there is a sign-in risk, it will challenge the user to either change the password or for multi-factor authentication. Okay, and further we can integrate the cloud apps, okay, with our Microsoft Cloud App Security solution. So it will not only protect the Microsoft Cloud's apps, but also the other cloud app security, solutions as well. All right, so coming to the demo, before we jump into demo, may I know if there are any questions that I can answer?
As of now, no.
All right, so in the demo session, I'm going to cover the Azure Identity Protection. We'll walk you through the process, how you can enable it, what are some of the configuration available. And in the conditional access, we'll see how one can access the application without MFA when accessing it from a trusted location, or you can say like a corporate location. The same user goes and tries to access from some other location, he'll be challenged for multi-factor authentication. In the same, I'm going to also cover a user who is trying to access, let's say, a Google Cloud solution outside the company network. So our conditional access is configured in such a way that if user is trying to access from company like trusted location, allow the access. If it's coming outside the property location, block that access. And then we'll see how one can integrate the other cloud application and leverage Azure AD as a authentication control. Okay. And towards the end, we'll go through the Azure Privilege Identity Management. We'll cover about how the user can assign the roles, how one can activate their roles, and some of the new features that are coming up, like privilege group, wherein like multiple roles are assigned. How can just activate that group membership, and that will grant him all the roles at one go. Okay, so let me get to my lab. Okay, just give me a minute here. Okay, so I'm at the Azure portal. I'm going to Azure, starting with the Azure Identity Protection. So Azure Identity Protection basically covers on 3 different areas. User risk policy, talks about the sign-in risk policy, and the MFA policy. So basically the user risk covers if the user password is compromised. So when the bad actor, right, when they get anyone's credentials, right, or compromised credentials, what they did try to do, they try to actually sell those in the dark web or black market, right? What Microsoft Azure AD Identity Protection does, it actually scans those dark web and tries to find out if there is any password. It finds, it tries to match that with the existing hash value that it has. If it finds that, hey, there is a match, okay, then it triggers an alert to either ask the user to change the password or block the access. Okay, so in this case, let's say I have configured with a specific group for the test. In the real scenario, you'll find that you'll probably enable it for all users and just exclude very specific users that need the exclusion. Okay, this is where it will trigger the user risk. So when this policy should be enforced, whether when it's low and above. So low and above is like pretty much for everything, right? When at the moment it gets even a small risk, it will go ahead and ask the user to change the password or block the access depending upon the policy config. So usually you'll put it medium and above. Okay, and that further you can say that what action it should take, it should do. So either block the access or allow the access, but ask the user to change the password. Okay, coming to the sign in risk policy. This is where it will basically ask the user to challenge for MFA. Okay, so this could be like the user is trying to probably log in from the unfamiliar location, or using like a Tor browser or anonymous VPN sort of thing, right? It gets like anonymous IP. So that's where it will find that, hey, this is something fishy. Okay, let me challenge the user for MFA. The same goes here as well. So pretty much put for all user and then have the exclusion, whoever needs the exclusion. Okay, in terms of the access, you can either block the access or allow the access here. Okay, and then coming to the MFA registration policy, basically it says to anyone, like in this case, all users, they should be challenged for MFA registration when they log in for the first time. Okay, in this case, the policy is off, so make sure to turn on that policy. Okay, now let's talk about the conditional access. Okay. So basically, in all the zero trust security model, right? Conditional access is the tool that is used by the Azure Active Directory to bring all the signals together to make the decisions and enforce the policy that has been defined here, right? So it's like it's the heart of the new identity-driven control plane. Okay, so let's see what we have configured here. Okay, and then we'll see the user on which I have applied this policy. So this policy is basically configured to say that there's a specific user. This user, okay, when he tries to access any of the cloud apps, okay, and the conditions I have defined a location saying there is a one trusted location. So if user tries to log in from that location, okay, he should not be challenged for the MFA. Okay, so in the control, if you see, I have selected for the MFA, but the moment it tries to access the any of the cloud apps from a different location, he should be challenged for the multi-factor authentication. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and try to log in that user with the trusted IP, and we expect that he shouldn't get a challenge for MFA, but the moment he tries to log in, using the different works location, he will be challenged for the multi-factor authentication. Okay, so this is the user where I have applied that conditional access policy, and I'll go ahead and try to log in here. So this would be like company network, treated like the user is trying to access from a company network. Sorry. Okay, so he's pretty much in. Okay, now I'll go ahead and try to use the same user account from one of the other location. This is somewhere I create like one VM on Azure in somewhere in Brazil location. So I'm trying to log in here with that account, and you would notice that the same would be challenged for the MFA. Okay, so let me just approve the MFA. Okay, just taking some time. Okay, so this user was actually trying to access the application which he didn't have the access, but he did got the access to Office 365 as such. Okay. So that's the beauty of conditional access. Yeah. Now, let's try to look at the different use case here. So in the other policy, I have configured to configure the block legacy auth. Now, most of the applications, right, especially with like Outlook 2013 and prior, or POP or IMAP clients, okay, those uses the legacy authentication, and this conditional access doesn't work, the legacy authentication. Okay, so Microsoft also recommends to disable the legacy auth okay, so that it just doesn't use the username and password. Okay, so in this case, what I have done, I have got the user. I have put that, okay, when the user tries to access any application using the legacy authentication. So basically it covers about the POP, IMAP or SMTP or MAPI over HTTP. Okay, so it will block that access. Other than that, if it tries for any other applications using the modern auth, that will allow it. Okay, so modern auth basically refers to this to browser and mobile apps and desktop clients. Okay, so since I do not have Auth 2013, I'm basically going to leverage the Microsoft Remote Connectivity Analyzer. Okay, and here instead of choosing the modern auth, I have selected the basic authentication. Okay, so if I perform the test, it would not be able to complete the test. It will fail while doing the authentication for auto discover itself. Okay, and we can see that in the sign-in events as well for the user. So this is where you'll see the sign-in events for users. Okay. Somewhere I was just trying this. So, okay, this was due to password. Let's see what's going on here. If not, I can try to start again, all over again. Okay, hold on. Okay, maybe because of this captcha. Okay, so I'll first test with modern authentication. No accounts found. Probably I should use the basic auth. Okay. So this will ensure that the basic auth is disabled or blocked. Okay. If there is a requirement, there would be most of the organizations, right? They do have certain applications that needs to access the mailbox using Exchange Web Services. For those, you can add them into the exclusion. Okay, like you see, it tries to connect, but it failed actually during the authentication for auto discover itself. Okay. Let me try to see if I can find that in the log. No, it's not coming up. Yeah. Let me try to look for another user here. So, and this one. Okay. So if you look at the sign-in logs and look at the conditional access, right? So this was when it tries to log in from the trusted location. So the MFA policy wasn't applied. But the moment he tried to log in from a different location, yep. So this one, right? It required for multi-factor authentication. This policy was applied and it was successful. Okay, coming to our third use case. Okay, the GCP Admin Access, right? So for this one, what I have defined is, so in this one, I have defined that specific user, GCP user 1, okay, for all the cloud apps, but I can just limit it to GCP as well. So you just go here and then select very specific application, okay, like Office 365, or in this case, let's say I can choose just the Google Cloud that I have integrated here. Okay, so just for quick stuff, I selected for lab, I selected all. Okay. So in this one, I have selected the condition. I have selected the pretty much same condition in the like location. Okay, excluded the trusted location and said that it should block the access. Okay, that means if the user tries to access from a trusted location for a Google Cloud, it will allow that. But if it tries from a location which is not trusted, it will block the access. It will not grant the access at all. So in the last use case, we saw that the user was challenged for MFA. In this case, we'll see that it will be completely blocked. Okay. So first I'll try to log in here. Okay. All right. So in this case, I have integrated the Google Cloud with Azure Active Directory. So it has redirected me to log into Microsoft Azure Active Directory. And when it comes to redirection, right, that's where we can set the conditional access and put all the security controls that you want to have. OK, so here, if you see, I provided my credentials at the Azure AD side, and now I'm in the GCP Google Cloud Platform. OK, now the same user will go ahead and try to access it from another location, and we expect the access to be blocked. OK, so just get that URL. OK, looks like something wrong. Remind that I'm not in that machine. OK, let me just log out for this user. Just bear with me. In the meantime, if there is any questions, I can help to answer those.
Yeah, there is one question here. How far back do the sign-in events go? Does
30
AD
days.
auto archive historic events at some point?
Yes, so the max we can go is 30 days. If you want to organization, right? I mean, so some of the organization either you can leverage Azure Sentinel and then get those logs in the Sentinel, or you can, if the organization have some third-party SIM tool, they can actually integrate that with Azure and then get those logs piped to that SIM location. So that is something can be done. Help that answers the questions.
Yeah.
OK, so see, now I'm trying to access it from a different location, right? And even though I have, let's say, the bad actor, right? He got your username and password, OK, but he cannot log in from a untrusted location. So these are the different use cases that the organization can use and leverage conditional access to secure their environment and the applications. OK. Let me go back to my, sorry. Yeah. And then further, if you see the conditions, right, there are different conditions. So this condition that you see, like user risk, this actually integrates with the Azure AD anti-protection. So whatever the sign-in risk, the user risk is defines, based on that can be also, you can choose what action should be taken. OK, similarly, it goes for the sign-in risk as well. OK, device platforms, iOS, Windows Phone, or any other device, right? So for those devices, you can filter it based on the device itself. So some organization that they purely use, let's say, Mac OS, right? They can define specific for that, or organization that are just leveraging the iOS for their mobile or email access, right? They can choose this policy and configure just for the iOS. OK, and further, you can also control it with the device state. So if the device is not, compliant, OK, then it should be blocked, right? I mean, those are, like it says, like it's currently I see it's in the preview and it has the option like device is marked as compliant. So if it's marked as compliant, that means it's going to check the device health as well. right? And then in the Intune side, you can create a compliance policy that will suggest that, hey, if the device meets the criteria, then only consider the device as compliant. If the device is not compliant, so it's not only, I mean, the device itself is also getting an identity. It's also getting validated whether it's compliant, non-compliant, whether can the access be granted or not granted. Okay, so that's the beauty of our conditional access. Now I'll go through the integration of our Google Cloud, okay, and how one can use. So in this case, I have used the Google Cloud. I have integrated this with Google Cloud, not just for the user sign-in, but also the provisioning. So this is one of the challenge, right? Means if you have a one central control, okay, your user from on-premise gets synced to Azure, and then Azure is not only controlling the authentication, but also the user provisioning. Okay, so in this case, let me log into my Google Cloud. Okay, so you see here, right? This is one of the user that I have synced. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a user and we'll come back and see how Azure can actually push the user account or the groups to the third party or other cloud apps the organization may be using. So you see, it's all coming to a single control. So currently what I have defined is I have defined that whoever is part of this group, okay, they should be synced. So let me go to this group, GCP, okay. Let me see if this was, okay, it was not created here. I go to members. Don't have that option here. Let me, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add one more user here. And then we'll see how we can sync it to Google Cloud. And when you remove the user from this group membership, he'll be also disabled in the Google Cloud. Okay, so your access control will be also granted, through the Azure AD itself. Okay, so coming to the Google Cloud and the provisioning, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to provision this user on demand. Yeah, let's see if Azure has got the user membership updated. Okay, so see, it matched. If there is existing user, it can match also, but in our case, it's a new user altogether. So the user has been created in the Google Cloud. There's so many different. Okay, so I'll just refresh this page. Okay. Okay, so you see, the user has been synced from Azure AD just by adding it to a group. Okay, if we do not forcefully like sync it, it will take roughly like 40 minutes sometimes to run it, run the sync. And now this user, since we have configured this to leverage Azure Active Directory as a what do you say, for the single sign-on access, every request that comes for that user will get redirected to Azure Active Directory, and then further we can configure or the conditional access to say what level of access and when to grant that access. So this is where we have configured that. I mean, different application has a different one. This is where we have configured in the Google Cloud. All right. So with this, any other questions you guys have?
Hi, Hasnain. I have one question here. I'm
Yep,
actually
sure.
not sure is it correct or not. Yeah, but
Yeah.
do we need to configure that single sign-on in GCP also, or
Yeah,
like it will be auto?
No, so basically, when it comes for the SSO configuration, right, it's like a two-way configuration. So certain configuration you need to do on the application side to say that, hey, whenever there is a sign-in request, redirect it to this. This is my identity provider. Go to that and then get the token from there. And on the Azure side, this is where you need to add the application. So like I added this application. Certain applications are already published here, but if they're not, if they still support the SAML or OAuth, you can still be added. So like you can add the on-premise application. You see like Adobe Creative Cloud, identity management, okay, Cisco AnyConnect. So there are hundreds of applications, I would say thousands of applications that can be integrated.
Okay, so the configuration should be done on Azure side, right? Not the
Azure
GCP.
side, no, it's like I said, right? It's a two-way configuration. Means
Okay.
the configuration needs to be done on the IDP. So Azure AD is the IDP here, identity provider, and the service provider is your GCP. So GCP should also be configured to say that where the request should be sent for
Okay.
authentication. So it's always a two-way configuration for the SSO.
Okay, thanks.
All right, moving to the Azure AD privilege management. So just now we were talking about the privilege identity management, right? That get the access when needed. Okay. There is no point for user to have, let's say, a global admin privilege or any other admin privilege when it's not a business hours for him, right? It's not his working hours. So that way you will protect the account, right? That means when the user is not doing any stuff or is out of the business hours, his account will have no permission. Somebody even managed to get his credential cannot do anything because it's doesn't have any privilege, right? So in this case, what I have done is I have got a user, okay, who has got a just single role as a user admin, and then I have got a one more user who is part of the security, and he has got multiple roles. Okay, so with earlier we had the Azure AD role, so one has to go ahead and activate each roles. Okay, so let's say someone has multiple roles, right? Okay, like let me see. Yeah, so these are different Azure AD roles, right? So if the user has to go ahead and apply or activate each role, so now Microsoft has come up with this privileged access group wherein you can assign the permission to a group and then add the user as a eligible member. That means user can go ahead and add himself as a eligible member. Means he can activate whenever he becomes a member of it, he'll get the all those roles that have been assigned to it. Okay, so like in this, hold on. Okay, yep. So in this case, I have created a security admin user who is the eligible admin to be a member of this group. Okay, so let's just log in first with the user admin. Okay, and we'll see what he has the access and how he can activate that. Okay, the activation can be self or it can also configured in such a way that his manager or some other user should activate, approve, then only it can be done. You can also configure it that for how many number of hours he can activate that role. So let's say if there is any maintenance going on, then we can activate for like 2 hours or 4 hours depending upon the change window. Okay. So coming to this, let's say I'll try to log in with that user admin. Try to keep the simple password, but sometimes I do forget. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so now you see, right, this user, his name is user admin, but his role is just user. That means he doesn't have any admin privileges. Okay, so what we'll see that how one can have the permission activated. Okay, so for permission activation, there are two types of permission assignment. One is eligible. That means user need to go ahead and activate the role. The other one is permanent, which means the user is full-time admin. That means he doesn't need to come and do the activation portion. Okay. So in this case, the user will go to Azure Privilege Identity Management. Okay, and then click on activate. Now here he'll see that the user has a role as as a eligible. Okay, so he needs to activate that. If he's an active assignment, that means he doesn't need to do anything. He is pretty much, then it means the user account will always have the permission. Okay, which is not a good way to deploy the privilege identity management. Okay, so you simply click on activate, then you can choose. So in this case, it is configured that additional verification is required. That means could be a multi-factor authentication. Yep. So it's asking me to set up the MFA in this case. Let me set this up. Okay, let me quickly set it up. I think most of you guys have already done this. Okay. So should be activated quickly. Okay. To provide this, can I skip this? No. Okay, I can. Looks like. Okay. So now I can just provide for how many. So max, it looks like it is configured for 1 hour. Let's say I'll just choose 1 hour. I'll just give PAU and then activate the role. Okay. So it will verify your permission eligibility, and then it has verified the multi-factor authentication. And once the role is activated, you will find that the user is now a user admin. Okay, so it is already done. It will refresh back, but will not wait. We'll just go directly here. Okay, so you see here, now this user is a user administrator. All right. So that's how he'll activate. Now we'll see how one can activate multiple roles, right? So if user has got multiple roles, he cannot go ahead and I mean, it's really painful, right? If user needs to go ahead and activate each individual roles. Okay, so for this one, it's not accepting. Okay. Let me quickly check if I can skip the MFA portion here. All right. Mm. 1 hour is the max is set up. So this is where you come and configure that if the activation is required or approval is to dictate if there needs to be approval set, and can it have like permanent eligible, or do you want to just have it like every 3 months it should be renewed, right? So those kind of configuration can be done here. Okay, I'll just go ahead and try to okay, so in this case, again, we'll go to the Azure AD and verify what access does the user have. Pretty much he shouldn't have any access. Yep, just the user. And now let's go ahead and look at the Azure Privilege Identity Management. Okay, so we are looking at the privilege access group because the access is granted based on the group so that he doesn't need to go ahead and activate each role individually. So what he need to do is just go to this E5 security administrator, and then membership is the eligible here. So he can be a member of it, and then all the roles that are assigned to it will get activated. If it does, okay, luckily it's not asking for the MFA portion here, so that's good. But this privileged access group is still in preview, okay? So keep that in mind. Any question, guys, in between?
No, as of now, no.
All right. So
yeah, there is one question. If you're deploying a legacy client server application, not a cloud one, and are hosting it across multiple application terminal servers, does that mean the identity protection or MFA extends only to the terminal server connection? You can see in the chat box.
okay, let me look at that question here. Is it in the chat?
Yeah.
I don't see the question in the chat.
If you are deploying a legacy client server application, not a cloud one, and are hosting it across multiple application terminal servers, does that mean identity protection and MFA extend only to the terminal server connection?
So it is not based on the server, right? It's more on the identity. So no matter wherever you log in, right? If the application is set or set with the conditional access, and considering when you're talking about the legacy application, right? First thing, is it doing a modern auth? If it's not doing a modern auth, then the conditional access will not be will be applicable. In that case, you will have to go with the Defender for Identity product, which is for on-premise that you can deploy, and that can help to monitor your signals. Okay, you can leverage the Azure application proxy to expose that to internet if you need to access from externally. But considering you mentioned about the terminal server, I believe it needs to be accessed internally. So I would say it's more on the identity, not the application as such. And if it's not doing a modern auth, definitely conditional access is not going to be applicable there.
Maybe Jay, if you have any doubt, so you can just unmute and can ask directly. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done with the demo. I'll just wanted to show the rules here. Yep. Okay, it is activated, not activated yet. Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah. So these are the roles that user has got now, like different roles. So he doesn't need to come, and activate each individual roles anymore. That's it pretty much from my side in the demo and this session. I'll be glad to answer any questions you guys may have.
Yes, if you have any other further question, you can ask. Or if you don't have any questions, so thank you, Hasnain, for your nice session and demos. And guys, if we have upcoming session on July 22, so these are the two very interesting sessions. One is on more on how you will find out the cost on Azure and how you can manage your cost. So FinOps on Microsoft Azure is nothing but managing your cost on Azure. So it will be very helpful for everyone actually. And second session is how you'll build your traditional AD labs in Azure. So you can go and we have already published the event, so you can go and can register on the meetup.com. And if you have any further question with Hasnain, so you can just go and ask. You can unmute yourself and can ask. So you can come here MSGUG on meetup.com and can register for the event. Also, thank you for joining today. Thanks everyone. If you don't have any further questions, so we'll close for today. Thank you, Hasnain. Thanks for really nice session. And yeah.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Our next session is cancelled, so we will arrange in upcoming someday. Yeah. And please help to provide the feedback on for the session. So if you have anything, thank you.